loud. All right, we're recording now. All right. So, as part of the contribution as the board members, I would do a couple of classes a year. They'd put me on the calendar. I'd think of cool things that I'd like to do, and I'd do them. If you haven't put your location in, tell us where you're coming from. We've got 4 of our world regions covered so far, which is awesome. But after I moved down here and retired, the work of Atlantic Institute, this is the South Carolina's chapter, I just felt that I wasn't able to give as much. And they said, but we'd love to have an international correspondent to continue kind of doing what you've been doing, but maybe once a month do a field trip that's about culture and connection. And one of the things that has always been important for me, especially in recent years, much more important and a much higher priority, is doing the things that align with my values. And one of the things that this organization is about helping us to be better at being diverse communities. And the way that we do that is about exposure so that we have the opportunity to appreciate things from different cultures, hopefully in the effort of really embracing our differences. And that really aligns with my values and some of my life work of building community and healing community and things that go down that line. And so I have continued on as one of the individuals that do some of the cultural creations, and that's why we're here today. And let me tell you about this. This is something that I've been excited about for months. So I hope that some of the excitement flows over on you and that you will enjoy what I have to share with you today. Let me tell you about today's cultural field trip. Today, I am going to be sharing with you a little bit about ceramics and the making of pottery in general, but very specifically about one of the experiences I'm involved in for research purposes, of course, to be able to share with you all, but I'm involved in, and it's the Raku firing technique that comes from the Japanese culture. And so I'm going to be sharing a little bit with you some of the video clips. I'm here in Ecuador, and one of the individuals that I've developed a friendship with is Holly. Holly, she'll tell you a little bit about it. She did not start out life being a ceramicist, but here she too is as one of the immigrant Cuencanas living out her passions. And pottery has become one of her passions. One of the things that she does now is in the studio that she has developed there at her home. She now teaches classes to individuals who want to learn about making pottery, both the traditional firing techniques, but also the Raku technique, which is one of the techniques that she now teaches here in Cuenca, Ecuador. So it's a Japanese style firing process by an American who's now living in South America here in Ecuador. And isn't that the kind of diversity and exposure that Atlantic Institute is all about? So this is part of sharing in that. So let me tell you about what I'm going to share with you. I am taking the classes. There's 5 sets of classes that I'm taking with her, and then we'll do the firing. And so on one of the recent classes, I just asked her to share about pottery, how she got into it, how she got into pottery here in Ecuador, being an American from the Midwest. And I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to share with you some of the works that she's done with this particular style. And then I want to kind of circle back because I was not real educated on making pottery. This was something that I think that might be interesting. I could make stuff and use stuff. And I'll show you some of the things I've done in this pottery exploration before the night is over. But I didn't understand the process. What is bisque firing and then glazing and underglazes and all of these words that are new vocabulary words for me. This is my first experience. I mean, except summer camp as a little kid when you have the little ceramics and you paint it and it comes back. Or I remember in kindergarten, they gave you a slab and they pressed your handprint in it. And for many years, that was on the wall of my mother's dining room. my handprint and the date of the handprint at that time. But that was really the extent of what I knew about ceramics. And so after I let Holly share with you about her connection with this, there's a couple of informational videos I want to show you that really talks about the processes, especially the firing process, to be able to really understand that. And then I may show you a little bit of the pottery work that I've been doing if we've got a little bit time. And then if you've got questions, we'll talk about that and chit chat a little bit more at the end. How does that sound for everybody? Got a thumbs up for everybody in there? All right. I'm doing the technology all by myself. You guys, send up a prayer. Send up a prayer. I'm going to try my best. This is my best. Whatever comes out, this is going to be my best. But if, as I begin to play it, you can't hear it or you can't see it, somebody unmute and say, "Lorana, I cannot see or hear the video." Okay? This is a team field trip. The whole gang is together. You've got your partner with you. If you need to have your snacks or your tea with you, that's fine. But we're going to go on this field trip together. I don't know if I said it. I'm Lorana Hughes, again, down here in Cuenca, Ecuador. All right. So Holly with Holly Clay Arts here. Let me flip to that one for you and hear what she has to share. All right. All right. Let's see. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do this. Oh, this is my first time without having the other helper with me. So, okay. Bear with me, bear with me, bear with me as I prepare. Okay, I think I've got it, but if you can't hear as this gets started, somebody unmute and just say so that I can correct that, because I want you to hear this experience. I'm still super excited about this experience in total. Okay, so I told you what order I was going to put it in, and I did it in reverse. My bad, but I just let it play. So let me tell you about, let me start there, and then I'll go to Holly, since that's the way the videos have flowed. Um, the pottery process, whether you're doing the Raku firing or the traditional firing, the beginning part of the process is the same. You get your clay, you decide what you're going to make, and you either build it or you use the spinning wheel and form it. Well, that part of the process is pretty straightforward. It really just pulls on my creativity. And let me show you, I took a pre-class to the Raku class. And one of the things that I did was I took a 2-day like intro class where we were making bowls. Now, they knew that we were all beginners. And so they had already prepared the clay for us, and it was just up to our creative imagination to be able to do this. Now, this particular class was going to be a traditional firing, but the process is you start with the clay that's damp, but then you must let that clay sit and evaporate some of the water. Once you do that, they do the bisque firing, which was the first part of that video that you saw. And what that's doing is drying it out, taking the rest of that excess moisture out of the clay. After that point, then you put your glaze on it. Now, there's a whole lot of options. You can put on a clear glaze. You can put on glazes that have colors and that leave things. Very strange thing, though, that the glaze may look green, but that may actually be like red or something like that. So looking at the labeling and making sure, in the particular class that we did, the very first one where we were making some plates or bowls, we used a clear glaze. And what that does is it kind of seals it. And then it goes through that firing process, a little bit different than the Raku firing process, but the similar concept of heating it up to a high temperature. Normally, you heat it up very slowly, get it to a high temperature. And what that does is it makes it waterproof and often food safe. Raku is a little bit different. Now, let me show you one of the first ones that I did. I'm sharing my art with you because I'm going around now saying I'm a ceramicist, a beginner one at that, but nonetheless, I am a ceramics artist. And so let me see if I can show you that. Are you guys able to see this? And I'll bring it in so you can see some of the detail. That looks real fancy, and it is. However, we started with a clay that already had been marbled. The white and the terracotta colors had already been marbled in. So when we shaped it and finished it, it looks and gives us this design that looks very rich and luxurious. I know, it's wonderful. I'm excited about it like a little kid. Look at the art that I did. Now, because this is traditional firing, this is a food safe dish. The one thing I learned about with Raku is it is not a food safe dish. It's fired in a very different way. And although you can use it for things and it can have contact with water, because of the glazing that's used for Raku, it's not recommended that you use it for food because those could be contaminants for food. So think of utilitarian things around your house. Some of the things that I'm in the process of making in this particular class is stuff. I made a Mancala game board. It's a game that you can use seeds, and it's kind of a strategy game that you play with the partner. Those are things that I'm going to use some seeds I've been collecting, some soursop and some cherimoya seeds. I like the way the seeds look. I'm a retired farmer. Um, you're not going to put those seeds in your mouth, hopefully. Uh, you're not going to put any food on these things for any long or exposed period of time where the chemicals from the glaze could leach out into your food. And so I had to kind of change my mind because I didn't know that going into the class, but making sure the things I was using weren't going to be tempting me to use them with food. So the first intro class that I did, these are fired in the traditional firing way. And so these are utilitarian in my house and I can use them for food. Right now, this one is holding some lemons that one of my neighbors brought to me. But I think it's going to be a snack bowl when it really realizes its full purpose. I think it's not too deep, but deep enough to be able to put maybe some popcorn or something like that in it. Right now, it's a fruit bowl sitting on my table, but it gave me some introductory experience with just handling the clay, because that part of the process is exactly the same. Let me see if I can get any Mancala. Yes. Yes. I'll have a brand new Mancala board at my house. So definitely, when life gives you Raku, make fruit bowls. Now that I can make things, because part of this was being able to make things that I'm going to use. I live in my apartment here in Cuenca. They build a lot of times with concrete, so I have concrete walls. So making things that you hang on the walls is like, don't want to do that. But I want to use the things. I want to have them in my home and be able to use them in ways that are just fun, and then be able to say, I made this bowl. The bowl that those snacks are in, I made them all by myself. So those are some of the intro pieces of this that are consistent regardless of what type of firing method you're using for your pottery. Let's see if I can actually get the video up that is Holly talking to us directly about this class in particular. Let me see if I can do it in the proper order this time. I think I can. Hold out for that positivity, put some positive energy in it, and let me share this tab instead. And newest exploration into some of the culture here so we're in Cuenca, Ecuador, but we're talking about Japanese ceramic firing techniques. So tell me who you are.
I'm Holly Deckard.
And tell me what we are doing in your studio.
We're making ceramic pieces, which is the same way most people make ceramic pieces. But I finished my pieces in a different method. I didn't invent it. I learned it from other ceramicists. It's called Raku, American Raku pottery. There's an original Japanese Raku, and this is sort of an adaptation. It's not exactly like the Japanese style, but very similar. So this, and I can send this to you around.
Okay. Oh, you got this a digital copy of that?
I do have a digital copy.
Okay, yeah, you send it to me.
Then it's in Spanish and English because I live in Ecuador. Right. Originally, it was just in English. But anyway, so this explains it. It's the different firing method. This is a photo of my little kiln. Lorano will have real videos of this in a few weeks when we actually fire. And what happens is we heat the pieces up really fast in like 30 minutes, which would normally in a kiln, an electric kiln, which is the most common type in the U.S. and in here as well, you would take maybe 10 or 15 or even 20 hours if it's a really big kiln to get up to 1,000 degrees centigrade, which is about 1,800 Fahrenheit. But I do it in 30 minutes, really fast. So these pieces are subjected to extreme conditions, I guess is the word. So, and then we turn off the kiln, and these are red hot pots, and we take them out. They're 1,000 C, 1,800 Fahrenheit, and we take them out red hot, and they go into, I have some metal cans, and I put sawdust and paper in there. You can use anything flammable, but for my purposes and the pots we make, I like that combination of some paper to ignite the fire and sawdust for the smoke. And then we put the lid on, and the fire eats up all the oxygen in that container, and it creates really special glaze effects.
So this is like smoked pottery.
It's smoked pottery. We smoke our pots here.
So how did you get into pottery? Because has this been your life work? How did you get into pottery, and how did you get into pottery in Cuenca, or how did it expand in Cuenca?
Okay. So my original profession, I was a dietitian, and I just took a little weekend.
Dietitian where? Where in the world were you?
I was in St. Louis, Missouri. I worked for 9 years in a hospital, and then my last 11 years, I was in a big school district in western St. Louis County with helping run the food service there. And I was at that school district when I took this little weekend. It was just like 3 Saturdays, make it and take it pottery. And I never thought of myself as artistic. I was always science girl. Food and gardening were my only hobbies, or, reading. But I just got obsessed. I was getting ready for empty nest. My youngest was a senior in high school, and I had a lot of time all of a sudden. And I told my husband for my next birthday that's what I wanted, pottery classes. And 5 years later, I left my full-time job. Wow. And started doing pottery full-time. And I was able to do that for 3 years until the pandemic hit. And we decided to move here. My husband had a job thing. And
job thing. I love that. Job. One of those job things.
Yeah, he retired. He left his job, and we just came down here. And it took a little while, but right away I found the ceramics, and just the art community here is like nothing I ever dreamed of. The people are all, so open. And for 2 years I actually worked at someone else's studio, and then 1 year ago I was able to find a place and set up my own studio here.
So your studio's at home, so you can do what you love at home.
Yes, I just walked from my kitchen right out here.
Now, would you show me some pieces of Raku? Do you have some pieces that are not Raku to show the difference?
Yeah.
And then show me what they look like.
Okay. All right.
Lisa's? Isn't that cute? All of them are just so adorable.
Everybody's so creative.
Was this an instrument too?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness. Look at that. The nose and just. Oh.
See, I love this.
I do too. I'm a knitter. I'm a crocheter mostly. I don't knit as much anymore. But look at that. Almost like mirror.
I know.
She said she dropped it and broke it. But that just is.
Yeah. But it's
lovely.
Yeah, when you see them in the sun, Raku.
I love that. That iridescent, just shimmer.
Okay.
All right, what we got here?
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so these 3 pieces here are normal ceramics with, this one's actually underglazes. This is regular glazes. There's not a whole lot of difference. So these 3 pieces are just what normal. They're low fire ceramics.
Okay.
These are all Raku pieces, and it's a variety of glazes and techniques. So this is turquoise with a yellow crackle. This is a clear crackle glaze on white clay. And you can see the beautiful
crackling,
and it cracks. What happens is when you take it out of the kiln at 1,000
but it's
degrees,
not cracked to touch. It's cracked like inside the glaze.
Yeah.
So the outside is still smooth.
It's smooth, but what happens is these little crazy things in the can will absorb that smoke from the sawdust and the fire, and it creates these beautiful effects. This is another. This is actually the same clay, same glaze. But this shape, the crackling is different. And that's the thing about Raku.
So even though it's the same clay, same color clay, same kind of glaze, you'll get a different effect on every piece?
Yes, because of the fire. Because it has to do with the temperature and just, there's so many factors.
Now tell me what's the utilitarian function of that?
This is a yarn ball, a double yarn ball. You can put yarn in here and for knitters. I made it for my friend. This is another glaze, and you can see the shiny luster.
It's like iridescent, almost like mirror iridescent.
Yeah, it almost gets like a mirror, and that's from the reduction of air reacting with copper. And you can see it even looks like copper.
It looks like copper.
Mm-hmm.
And this is different types of glazes that give you these different effects with the Raku.
This glaze on this angel is the same glaze. I thought maybe it was, I think it's this glaze, this Pikenberg red, because see you get some greens and reds. So this is the same glaze, and it's one glaze on this side. You can see the line. This is another common feature of Raku is to mask off parts that have no glaze. This was white clay, and in the can, with the smoke and the fire, it absorbs the carbon and turns black. The bottom really got good and black. So sometimes it's a little more gray, but this is another glaze. It's sort of, this one's like my satiny one. It doesn't get super shiny, but it's not completely matte either.
Got that iridescent kind of shimmer.
Yep. So, and in the sun, here, in the sun, you can see it's even better looking in the sun.
So one side's got a much more shiny, glossy kind of finish versus the other.
And then I have this one. I don't have a lot of matte copper, but see, that's called a matte copper.
Oh,
and
wow.
see, it's matte.
It's got an iridescent.
But it's got iridescent on there.
And it shimmers as you turn that in the light.
In the sun. So, yeah. So that's some examples. The last thing I'm going to show you is this has no glaze on it. This is a pot I made. Actually, this is from some clay I got from an Ecuadorian friend here. She digs her own clay. So it's a little different variety. But it worked in my Raku kiln. Sometimes clays that are not designed for Raku can crack. Raku clay has it has extra particles in it to help it take the shocking. But the dug clays here do pretty well. I've had several people bring them. And so I made this out of the dug clay from my friend. Just dug right out of the ground here in Ecuador.
Wow.
And you sieve it to get branches and the plant material out of it. But then you just let it dry and it's clay and you can use it. But this pot has no glaze on it. It is just, this little part is just some stain coloring. It's not glaze. When I take it out, I don't put this in the can. We set it aside on I have a metal surface to put it on. And these, the designs on here with the black is horsehair, the skinny ones, and feathers burned on when it's red hot. And it absorbs that carbon and makes the design. So after it comes out of the kiln where it's super hot, you then add feathers and horsehair. You drop them on there and they burn, and it makes the image. This one has a really good image. It almost looks like a scene on there, but it's just really the randomness of the items that touched it. Yeah, this was like a big bunch of horsehair. I just held it up there, and then sometimes I do one at a time, and it gives you a different line. But that's pretty much the effects you get, and yeah, I have a blast. Nice. And so this is the dried pottery before it's getting fired. This would be the greenware after the bisque firing, but after they've put the glaze on it. And so she's getting these ready for the kiln. You see the hot pads and just different protective things because we're dealing with very high heat. And then she's there. This is operating off of gas. And so she's getting the kiln set up. You see the cover that'll go onto it. She talked about taking the oxygen out of it, but it's a very fast heat up. And she's getting that ready right outside of her studio. And then as you see, they've got shelves, and those blocks that were like pillars are like risers so that you can put some things on one level and then other things on the other level. And so this was one of the considerations we had to make was size. There's a maximum size based on the kiln that she has for the kinds of things that we can make. And so you see her getting ready to get that lit. You see again with those things stacked on there. Some of the pieces that you just saw, that upside down one is the vase that she made without the glaze that's from dug clay. So clay that's been dug up from the riverbank or from the earth. And she talked about some of the other techniques where they use horsehair. And when it touches those vases, it leaves that imprint. It burns and leaves that imprint that makes quite interesting designs. And then you see that she's got the hot thing and they're getting ready to take them and put them into those containers. And they put the lid on and there's sawdust and paper, shredded paper in there. And that paper ignites it,
but the sawdust smokes it, and that gives you the smoked pottery that we were talking about with the Raku style. And she talked about having help. This is where people come together and they do this. This is one of the crafts that is a very popular craft here. Families where this is the third or fourth or fifth generation that they've been doing pottery. And so mastery level artists that have passed down the traditions in their family as being ceramicists. But this becomes kind of a group community kind of activity where they're firing these pieces, and you need the extra hands. And you see the red hot, that they're 1,000 degrees Celsius. I think she said 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. So very, very, very hot and very, very, very fast heating process. And so the pottery comes out red hot, red hot. And then afterwards, cooling them down rapidly. And then revealing. You don't know what it's going to look like and how the glaze is going to react until it's done. And so this becomes kind of that reveal where the paper, the ash is being whisked off of the item, and you're able to then see the coloring that glaze offers. Some of the other pieces. You see the smokiness, and oftentimes in the crackling of the glaze, you'll see where the black or gray goes in there, the different pieces. And it's usually not solid, that the glaze kind of, it's a guess. There's one particular glaze that some parts are red versus other parts of the item are green, but it's the same exact glaze. So it just depends on where it interacts and how it interacts with the clay. And that really is part of kind of the lesson of art, that the clay is going to become what it's going to become. And that was really an interesting, challenging. This really challenges my sense of perfection, that the clay, you're working with the clay, but the clay's got dynamics all of its own. You're working with the glaze, but what will become of that is like you don't know until you finish. And when it's finished, you go, oh my, I made that, and it's wonderful. It's beautiful. Kind of like a little kid bringing home their kindergarten pictures. Do you like my picture? It's beautiful. I made it. I'm happy about it. And part of that is letting me recognize the parts of me that are judgmental towards myself. It's the stuff that we tell ourselves. Our sense of what good and perfection needs to be. And so I'm grateful for experiences like this that have challenging those areas in my life. Before I show you some of the pieces that I'm working on, let me give you a little bit of a history lesson about Raku pottery. For me, I have found this and the ceramics work in total to be quite a fascinating activity. And really the dynamics of this firing process that really offer artists a really hands-on and immediate and really deeply personal approach to pottery. As you could see in those pieces, it's the work of the artist collaborating with the clay. And that's going to be individual to each person. It's my hands and the way that I shape and mold the various things that I make. But this technique is rooted in the Japanese tradition. And it's evolved significantly in the United States to become really kind of its own distinct expressive art form, but it's got really deep roots in these traditions. And I want to explore just a few minutes with the unique characteristics of the American adaptation and the process itself. First of all, Raku pottery originated in Japan during the 16th century, and it was primarily associated with tea ceremonies. The term Raku translates to ease or enjoyment, really reflecting the philosophy behind the technique. In traditional Japanese Raku, pottery is hand-shaped rather than thrown on a wheel, emphasizing its simplicity and spontaneity. For me, that was what drew me to ceramics. I wasn't so drawn to the ceramics work of using the wheel and throwing the pottery in that way. Some of the other students that were in my class, they were doing that work. But for me, it was a matter of texture and that clay in my fingers and the water. And if you put too much water, you lose it down in the bottom. And I just was too many variables for me. But I thought, roll me out some clay and think playing with some dough where you get the rolling pin and roll it out and you're rolling out a pie topper or you're rolling out something and then you're making things from that, whether you're cutting out pieces or you're molding it by hand. That is the part of it that appealed to me. And that's very traditional to the Raku style, the simplicity and the spontaneity of putting some clay in my hand and seeing what comes out of it. The traditional process involved firing the pottery in a small kiln, removing it while it's still hot, allowing it to cool rapidly in the open air. That quick cooling process creates really a unique and often unpredictable set of colors, textures, and the crackling pattern. On some of the pieces that I've seen, the crackling pattern is there, but if you rub your hand over it, it's smoothed over. So the crackling is actually in that glaze under the surface, but those patterns of that, and because of that characteristic, it really makes every piece that's done truly a one-of-a-kind piece of art. The American adaptation, if we go from, we were 16th century, if we jump fast forward to the mid-20th century, Raku was introduced to the United States. The artist Paul Soldner is who it's attributed to. He experimented with this traditional method and he adapted it in different kind of innovative ways. So it's pulling from that cultural heritage, but really taking the creative liberty to evolve this particular art form. It diverges significantly from the Japanese roots by really embracing more of the spontaneous, experimental kind of approach with it. As you heard Holly talk, sometimes they use horsehair to get a different kind of effect or other kinds of ways. One of the pieces, they put tape on one end so that there's not the glaze, and anything that's not taped off gives this black, smoky, almost matte kind of finish. That to me is what I think of when I think of that kind of experimental deviation that the American Raku tends to take on. It's become a really popular technique in the American ceramic arts community due to its emphasis on creativity and the hands-on involvement of the artist. Ceramics is absolutely a hands-on experience. The process, as you heard Holly talk about, is one of the differences, the post-firing. She talked about the reduction process. Unlike the traditional Japanese cooling it in the open air, the Raku pieces are instead placed in combustible materials. So the Raku Japanese style Raku would take those and let those pieces cool in the air. But the American style puts them in containers with combustibles. Newspaper and sawdust are the two things that Holly talked about. The newspaper to ignite it, and then that ignition causes that sawdust to smoke. Very similar to a smoked barbecue kind of process. That wood is smoking. In this case, it's the sawdust. Sometimes it's leaves or things like that. Immediately after you take the things out of the kiln, they're immediately put into that combustible chamber. That reduction environment creates really an oxygen-deprived atmosphere. You put that lid on, and what that heat and that flame does is it eats up all the oxygen. And that has an influence on the final color and the surface effects of the pottery. As she was showing you, I hope that you were able to see some of those details, but there's some that are smooth and shiny, very similar to the finish that's on this with traditional. You can kind of see a little bit of the shine. You can, the smoothness of it is a smoothness like a plate would be, like glass would be. But with other ways, if it's not glazed, it may have more of a matte and a different kind of of texture. So the surface effects of the pottery are also affected by this combustion process of putting it into this container, putting the lid on it, which starves the oxygen, puts the fire out, but lets it smoke. So you get that smoky effect. In the crackling of the glaze, that's where that smoke goes, and you're able to see those lines, a black or even a gray kind of coloring. The firing process is this kind of exhilarating process because it's this burst of stuff that engages. It's the smell, it's the smoke, it's all of that. However, it does require careful preparation. As you heard her say, traditional firing, you heat your pottery up slowly. This is the opposite. It requires your attention to safety and those kind of things, because if the clay is not properly handled, if it's not properly dried, it can explode. If there's a moisture in there, an inappropriate amount of moisture, when water gets hot, it expands. Well, if it expands, it could cause a blowout in your pottery where that water expands and blows a hole in your pottery, and that could be dangerous. It also could ruin the other pieces that are in the kiln at that same time. So the preparation process is really important. They're typically made from a heavy clay. And as you heard Holly talk about, there's certain kinds of other things in that clay that make it really good for Raku versus other types of clay. There's the other minerals and things that are in it help it to withstand the thermal shock of the rapid heating and cooling. You go heat up real fast and then cool down real fast. And so it needs to be the right type of clay with the right kind of components that can handle that shock. The pieces are bisque fired first. That was the first video that we talked about. As your piece dries, she talks about it going from leathery dry to bone dry. And so the pieces, and I'll show you the pieces that I have been working on, you put them on the shelf and then you let them dry for a week or so, as much of the moisture out of it that will evaporate. And then you bisque fire them. That's the first firing process before you put the glaze on it. And that makes them durable enough for the Raku process. And then the glazing is really the essential part. The glazes often contain copper, iron, and other metallic oxides that react dramatically during the firing process and the reduction stage. Some of the pieces that she was showing as she was talking, those coppery colors will come out. You'll see that copper coloring or the other colorings evident in your pieces. And some of that, those particles and whatnot, are what give you really the diversity. Those are particles typically in the glazes. And as you paint and cover that piece before firing, the final firing, with those metals and things adhere to the clay and become part of the color and the texture of that. They can be brushed or dipped or sprayed. Each way of adding the glaze will create a little bit of a different effect in that. And then once they're glazed, as you saw kind of some of the pictures of, the pottery is loaded into the Raku kiln. And it can be gas or electric. Holly's happens to be a gas. They're more common because of their ability to reach the high temperatures quickly. And it gives you the flexibility of adjusting the temperature inside the kiln as well. So that's oftentimes a very common one. And as you heard her talk, the kilns get about 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit, which is almost 1,000 degrees Celsius. That's very, very, very hot. 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit on a scale like with your weather. Today, it was in the low 70s Fahrenheit for me in my city. These kilns go to 1,800 degrees Fahrenheit. And then when the kiln reaches the desired temperature, the glaze becomes like a molten. It's like melting this glaze, kind of like if you were to melt glass. It gets glossy, and then that's when the real magic happens. This glaze coats your ceramic piece, the greenware, that ceramics piece, and that's really where the magic happens. And at that point, the pottery is red hot. And so you saw the gloves, the tongs where they're using this protective gear as they open this up and as they remove these things, because there is some danger in this, because you're dealing with red hot ceramics, red hot clay that's been fired with this glaze that gives it this molten, like glass, like almost finish, but at extreme temperatures. And so they're taken out of the kiln. This is the American Raku style, taken out of the kiln and immediately placed into the reduction chamber. It's usually a metal garbage can-like container, and it's got your shredded newspaper and your sawdust in there. The extreme heat of the pottery, because it's 1800 degrees Fahrenheit, it ignites the material. So you don't have to go and light it. You just put it in there and it lights it. And that creates the initial flame and the smoke. And then they put the lid on that, and the lack of oxygen pulls the metals from the glaze to the surface. So the colorings that you saw, some of those that you heard me commenting, oh, it's shimmering. The lack of oxygen pulls those metals out of the glaze and puts them in the surface, puts them on the surface of your piece, and that's what results in the vivid colors and the metallic sheens on some of them and the crackling patterns that happen. And then after a few minutes, not long, but a few minutes in the reduction chamber, the pottery is removed and then submerged into water. Again, this extreme temperature change, and that enhances really the crackle effect and sets those colors in the locations that they are. And so this rapid cooling process is known as quenching. And then once that piece cools, the soot and the residue from that reduction process are cleaned off. And eventually, once that cleaning is done, it reveals the final and unpredictable surface effects for your piece of art. This American Raku, the appeal to it really has been said to be the spontaneity, the unpredictability, and really the variety of surface effects that can be achieved. And so there's this broad kind of mystery yet controlled, but there's a whole lot of things not in your control. The reduction process, remember that process that pulls those metals to the surface that are in those glazes, create brilliant copper reds and iridescent blues and smoky blacks, and often on the very same piece. And this process, because of that spontaneity and the unpredictability of this process, no two pieces are identical. The artist's control is really secondary to the whims of the firing and the reduction process. And this process really, for me, speaks to what art is: the balance of control and chaos. The artist sets the stage by selecting how they create this piece of art. They select the glaze and the firing conditions, what style of firing they do, but they have to embrace the unpredictability of the final outcome. No control. And so this is an exercise in letting go, celebrating the beauty of perceived imperfections, and really finding the joy in the unexpected. There are some safety considerations because of the high temperatures. And so part of this process is about being safe. You want to enjoy the art. And so protective gear and face shields and long sleeves and fire retardant things, gloves and utensils. She does it outside, the firing process outside, because you need to be in a well-ventilated area. As you heard me say a little bit earlier, these metals and things are in there. But if those were ingested in a closed, confined space, those could be damaging. And then safety things, water and fire extinguishers and things like that are part of the process. So this American Raku style, even though a deviation in some of the form from the traditional 16th century Japanese way of doing Raku, it really is the testament to how art can evolve. Raku is not just a pottery technique. It's really this artistic journey. As I was telling you about kind of my personal artistic journey, this is a journey that's emphasizing things like experimentation, spontaneity, and really the joy of creating something, my bowl, my mancala game, other kinds of things. It's about really embracing the unexpected and finding beauty in the imperfect, things that are perfectly imperfect the way they are. And so for beginners or experienced potters like Holly, this offers really endless possibilities to express creativity and really connect with the dynamic of nature, of fire and smoke and clay. And this has been just a really interesting and exciting exploration for me as I began this talking about really challenging that need for perfection instead of being much easier to embrace the perfect imperfection that art really is all about. Whether it's a ceramic artist or a painter or a fiber artist or a music artist or anything else in that area. So that's the history part of this. Let's talk about the experimentation part of this. One of the way this class opportunity worked is that we have 5 classes and we were given 10 pounds of clay. That all by itself was exciting. It was like, let me add it. What can I do? And the first thing that you do, and because I was doing things that I was building, is you literally, if anyone's ever made pie crusts, think about taking a slab of that and rolling it out. And that's where we started. And then we had to decide what we would make. And I'll share with you some of the things that I make. Let's see if I can pull that screen up, and I'll kind of narrate some of the things that are in their drying stage. That I have. Let's see if I can pull these up. All right, I'll start with, let's see. Oh, will it play? Okay, give me just a second. I want to show them one at a time so you can see them a little bit bigger. Okay, can you guys see that? Are we good? Can you guys see that screen? I hope so. I think so. If not, someone come in. So what I started with on this particular one, and again, had to pay attention to the size because of the width of the kiln. And so I was mindful of that and even pulled out a ruler to make sure I wasn't beyond the limits. And what I did on this one was I did the flat part as a slab. And then what I did was I cut some slices and made circles out of those and smoothed them. And there's a process where you affix them together with the clay called slip. It's a wet form of the clay that you use like glue. And then you smooth those areas out. But my game board is going to be in 2 pieces because you need the little cups for your seeds. And because I didn't want to go over in size, and because doing them too small, I thought I'd have problems kind of cleaning up the clay. What I did was these 2 little squares on the bottom are actually little square bowls, and they go right on the ends of both sides of the mancala board. So each player has their cup for their seeds or their beans. And then you saw her talk about the instrument. Well, mine again took shape. We start with a ball. The right portion of this starts out as a ball, and then you can decide how you want to shape it once you make that sphere. And we take clay and we make lots of little beads, and we put them inside before we closed up the ball. Now we wrapped each one of them in paper towel, which she says will then burn off in this process, but that keeps them from sticking to each other. And it's a rattle. So when you hear it, it's like a percussion instrument. And so the holes are to be able to let the sound out. But then I wanted to put a handle on it. I flattened my ball out flat on both sides, and it looked kind of like a little drum. But I had an idea about what I was going to do with my handle. I was going to make this Y-shaped handle that came down, and it was where you could grip it with your hand. But as I did that and affixed it to my to the round portion that I had flattened out, it kind of looked like an elephant. And so I took creative liberty because it's my stuff. And I decided that's what it would become. It evolved into this. And so it was a Y-shaped. And I had, of course, been on Pinterest exploring all kinds of Raku pottery. It's a whole rabbit trail. And I saw a technique where they had put a little ball in the middle. And so I thought, I'm going to give that a try. It was a little more work than I had bargained for, but I persevered. And then it was shaped very much like the trunk. And I've been practicing with my Zentangles. I've been doodling and things. And so I have an arsenal of shapes and doodles in my mind. And I thought I would decorate this with 4 or 5 different types of doodles. On the top, going down the backside of what it is now his head, are spiral doodles. And in the middle of those spirals, I also put some more holes. And then I thought, well, my elephant needs some ears now. And so I drew out the ears or carved out some ears and used one of the tools to put some scrape marks there to give it a little bit of texture. And then I thought it needs an eye too. And this is probably a really good place for an eye to go. And so I used one of the dimpling tools to do that. And I thought, since I'm making holes for the sound to come out, I should probably put one there. That would make for a really good eye. Can you guys see those pictures? Somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see the pictures that I see. Or unmute and tell me. Thumbs up. Okay, great. I'll keep it moving then. So that's going to be my instrument, and those are the cups for my Mancala game. This was a randomness of something that's going to be. I was thinking about things that I could put on nightstand tables. I put my earrings off, or put my cell phone or something that I've got beside my bed, maybe a cup of water or something like that. So it's just kind of a something. I started with the slab. There was some stamps that I could put in there. I thought about putting that border around the side of it. And I kind of got to the point where it was like, I think I'm pretty good with that. I'll sign my name on the bottom. And I think this one too is done. Another one of those interesting things, she was talking about putting feet on things. And I thought this would be a cute little nightstand kind of table where you just put little trinkets. I have stuff in my pocket sometimes, or I may forget to take my earrings off, and you don't want to just take them off when you're in bed and throw them in the bed. You just could put them right there on the nightstand. I don't really know what it's going to be. It might be a soap dish. I'm not really sure. But I practiced putting the little feet on the bottom so that it's up off the ground. I practiced some decorative elements, and I think that's the creative expression part of this process, that it evolves into what it's going to become. Some of my Zentangle doodles, I have a little notepad. It's only about 3 or 4 inches big, but I do some of my doodling. And so I took one of my doodles and transferred this on there. I don't know what I'm going to use it for. It might serve as a little trivet. It could be also a little nightstand table. It could be a spoon rest. It could be a whole bunch of other things. I don't really know what it's going to be when it grows up, but I'll be able to use it for something. So that's another piece that I did. And right above it, you can see another piece. And some of that's just a square that I did. I measured out to a certain size and then did some of the doodling that I did on that with one of the engraving tools that I had, just really playing with it. And I took all 4 of the corners and curved them up. And so it's this thing that's kind of curved up. So if something's in it, it doesn't quite fall out. And I thought, that's another something that I'll put some stuff in, or something. I don't really know. Maybe some napkins or cutlery, forks and stuff when I have parties, or things like that. But something that would give me a shape that I could use for a variety of things. It too could be a nightstand table or something in my bathroom, like a soap dish. It's a little bit large. I think this was about 5 inches square, maybe 6. So it's a little bit large, maybe a little bit larger than a soap dish, but it could be all kinds of things. I don't really know. Maybe you guys have some suggestions of what it could be when it grows up. That's another picture of it. And then this one is my kind of interesting piece. Well, I told you about the Zentangles that I've been doing. And so as a result, I have some colored pencils now, and I have some markers. I have some colored pens that have glitter in them. And I started out with, a set of pencils and some markers. And I had a little container that was straw, and I could put my little things in there. Well, I've outgrown that, and I got more than that. And I thought, I'll just make a little hold it thing for my pencils. And so what I did was I took some of the slabs, rolled it out like you'd roll out some dough, and I cut out some pieces of it. On several of the pieces, I cut out 4 of them. On several of them, I took some of the imprint designs. There are these wood rollers, like a little bitty rolling pin, and you roll it along the clay and it puts those images, it imprints that on there. And so I did that, and then I did kind of a semicircle, almost a closed circle in the middle, so that I've got 4 compartments to be able to set my pencils and my pens and my markers in. I did all of that onto a flat square bottom, and so I've got a flat bottom with these containers, and that's going to be my brand new holder for my pencils and pens and coloring supplies. And then these are some of the other students that have been working with me. On the very left side, you'll see one of my classmates, Lisa, that did a coil style. She used the coils and built this vase. And what she'll do is she'll put a plastic, like a recycled water bottle in there that'll hold water, and you could put flowers or something like that in there. Because this is not the same firing style as the other pottery that I showed you, it's like terracotta, where it won't leak outright, but terracotta leaches moisture out slowly. And so these will have very similar kinds of effect. If you look at the piece behind my square, you'll see those geometric shapes with the circle. One of the individuals that was in our class is a carpenter and a lamp maker. He's new to ceramics. He makes lamps with stones. Beautiful works. He's shown me some of the pictures. And so he's trying his hand at lamps. During our 5 weeks, he's made 3 lamps. This is the base of one of them. He's a carpenter as well, and a furniture builder. And so it'll be very interesting to see the finished product of this lamp once he puts his magic to it after it's fired. Several of the other pieces that you see, the one that's in that stand, one of the students has this stand and wanted a piece to be able to fit into this. It looks like the perfect snack container for me. Put that on the table with some popcorn or French fries or something of the sort, and it looks like it'll be perfect. And so he created that in the stand so that it would dry to the shape that he was going to need it for. He'll take that out, fire it, and then it will fit perfectly in this stand. This is the customization. If you see the one in front of my little short one in the front, you'll see those ridges going around it. That's that little rolling pin that I was telling you, that there are lots of different styles of that individuals you can take and put the imprints, all different kinds of designs. That happens to be the squiggly one. That is also, it looks like stacked stones, but that's one of Felipe's lamps. And so those spheres he built very similar to how I built the sphere for my percussion instrument, except his weren't as flattened and they're stacked. And as you can see, the portion where a cord can go out, he had a vision in mind and put this together in a way that I guess a lamp maker would understand. As you can see, the one next to mine and in front of my Mancala game is a bowl that has a dragon coming out of the bowl. So he did a dragon and put it in the bowl. He's got, it needs to dry a little bit slowly because he was doing some work on this on the day that I took this picture, and then that'll come off once it's finished and cleaned up and set, and it'll finish the drying process. And then one of the ladies in our class was doing throne bowls, so she was using the spinning wheel. Beautiful bowls that she's created, those 4 down on the bottom shelf next to my coloring supplies. And so all of these are the pieces that we have been working on for the past 5 weeks. And we will gather together in a celebration in a couple of weeks and come together kind of like a party and finish with the firing techniques using this Raku style. And so our firing, our pottery will have a very similar effect, not similar, but a representational effect like you saw in some of those works. And I'm super excited to be able to really see the finished progress. This has been about 5 weeks of crafting and making and thinking about what you're going to make. And I'd go back each week, each Wednesday, and I'd open up my stuff. Oh, I forgot I made that. Oh, that's so cute. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but it's going to be so cute. I'll figure it out as I go along. And so this process for me is the opportunity to explore new things, the opportunity to explore the spontaneity of art. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity. I'm so grateful for being in a community with so many gifted ceramic artists. This community has just amazing artists. One of the things that's peculiar to this area that I've never seen before is some of the locations that have ceramic murals, where the artist has a picture in mind but creates tiles. And then on the side, one of the universities, probably 50 feet up and probably 30 or 40 feet wide, is a ceramic mural where the ceramicist has made every individual tile. Think of doing a mosaic, but think of making every single tile to the scale of 50 feet tall by maybe 40 feet wide. And those are just one type of the ceramics that's done here. In one of the recent field trips that I did this year, I introduced you to Eduardo Segovia. Eduardo Segovia is one of the master ceramicists in his late 80s and still a prolific artist here in the community. When I was doing my first class with the bowls that I showed you, he lives in that neighborhood and came to the class, and he looked over my shoulder and said, "Your bowl is beautiful." So if anybody says anything about my ceramics work, I will be able to tell them that the maestro, Eduardo Segovia, said that my bowl is pretty, and he is a master. So it has been a joy for me to really explore my own creativity of taking a lump of clay literally and deciding on what it's going to be, but with the idea that I can only do so much. It's me and the clay working together. We are the artists, and I'll be excited to see what happens as we finish firing those pieces and see the kind of brilliance and diversity of color and texture that comes out. And so this has been a wonderfully exciting exploration for me of getting my hands in the clay and going and playing with my friends and our clay and creating things that will leave memories for me. I'm making memories to be able to sit in a rocking chair and share with my grandchildren as they get older. But it also is about what Atlantic Institute is about understanding and appreciating our diverse cultures, and if we choose the richness that it gives us in life today. This is a 16th century Japanese culture that's been adapted and evolving into this art form that's being practiced here in Cuenca, Ecuador, by an American. And all of that is about the diversity that really allows us to see the benefits of our differences. And so I hope for you too that this helps to just expand your thinking about how we can better embrace and be enriched by our differences. Oftentimes we want to come together or want to separate ourselves because of our differences, but what if we learn to appreciate them? And what if our differences were the very things that enrich the lives of all of us? I know my life, my retirement experience has been enriched by the sharing of the ceramics art by local Ecuadorians, but also by this immigrant Ecuadorian just like me, coming and bringing their passions and sharing them with not only me, but the diversity of students in our class. Our small class had Americans and Ecuadorians there creating art together, and it has been a joy. And so I thank you all for letting me share. And why don't we take a few minutes if you've got questions, if you'd like to um, unmute, and I can do any questions and answers about the Raku pottery style of firing or the ceramics process I've been involved in. So feel free if you've got questions or comments to unmute, and we'll just have a few minutes of sharing time before we end this field trip and go our separate ways until the next time. So anyone have questions for me or about this experience? Any questions? Excellent. Give it a few minutes. Any questions? Questions? Well, I definitely want to thank you all for coming with Lorana again on another field trip as we explore all kinds of diversity that can enrich our lives. That was Holly Decker with Clay Arts by Holly. If you'd like to find out and see more of her work or her pictures, she's on Facebook, Clay Arts being one word. By Holly. If you have not, let's see if I can put that link also. Let me see if I can put that link for you in there. I wasn't prepared to do that, but now that I'm talking it out loud, let me see if I can put that link in there so those that would like to just go and explore really some of the other things that she's doing. Yes, I can find that. Let's see. And yes, I can find it. Yes, I can do this. And so if anyone is interested in just seeing some of the things that she's doing, scrolling through and seeing some of the other pieces of art that she's done this Buddha that has this, the coloring is just so beautiful, or these llamas, or fun stuff that she's doing. She's right now working on some mushrooms, and they're going to be yard art. They're waiting to be fired. So I'm excited about that too. So if you'd like to follow Holly, tell her that you learned about Raku from the Atlantic Institute and Lorana, and she'll know exactly who that is. And so I'm so grateful for her allowing us to come into her studio and to learn, and allowing me to share my experience with you, and for giving you a little bit of details from her perspective and sharing with you her journey into ceramics. She's not been a lifelong ceramicist. She too is finding her passion here in retirement. And it's just a joy to see that and to experience with that, to see how this passion of hers has helped her create community. She's got an artist community where she goes and they fire together, and it's Americans and Ecuadorians working together, because they share a point of connection in this art world. They share that point of connection with the ceramics art, or with Raku firing. And so these are ways that our diversity and our alikeness enrich our lives. She's created a community of artists that share this passion with her, that teach each other and share with each other in all kinds of ways. And it's wonderful for me to get to experience it even as a beginning ceramicist. So thank you all for letting me share this with you. If you don't know about Atlantic Institute and the other things, please check them out. Find out about the other calendar of events that will be happening. There's several of us correspondents and field trip leaders. The next field trip I will be doing, I think, will be the Forbidden Museum. It's going to be an October special. I thought, how appropriate. The Museum of Forbidden Art. So it's going to be a little edgy. So join in for that in October. We had some technical difficulties a few weeks ago with the living history with Umi Nandi. Living history of the first Black woman, the first Black to integrate Newberry College in Newberry, South Carolina. I had the opportunity to interview her this year and really talk about her experience. We had initially scheduled that on a day that was representational of international abolition of slavery. And I felt like that was a continuation of abolishing slavery and then moving into that place of abolishing segregation in the United States, and having the living history and the opportunity to be able to hear their story in their own words. And I'm grateful to have had that experience. So we had some technical difficulties, but we've rescheduled it. I hope you will check that out on the calendar and join in. And I don't know if I've got anything planned beyond that. I think she might be scheduled in for later this month. And I'm not sure what I've got on the calendar for November and December, but stay tuned and check out the other explorations that some of the other correspondents are doing. Thank you all for joining. Have a great evening. I'm going to let you off the bus of this field trip. Enjoy your morning or night from all of the places. If you did not let us know where you're from and you'd like to before you leave out, put it in the chat so we can put that in our notes The directors like to see who we're reaching, see where the reach is. Thank you, Germany, for chiming in at 1 o'clock to come and hear about what we've got going on. Bye from Colorado and Philippines and New York and all the other places that we're here this afternoon. It's been a joy to share with you. Thank you for letting me share with you one more time. You guys have a great evening. Bye-bye.